we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, glorious and
I want to give 3 scripture readings, very brief scripture readings, which I think can act as scriptural basis for what we're doing here this afternoon. One of the things we're doing is unveiling a cairn, and we've always used cairns and monuments to mark our memory. And there is a passage in 1 Samuel, chapter 7, verse 12, in which such a monument was made. Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Jeshanah, and called its name Ebenezer, for he said, hitherto the Lord has helped us. The second scripture reading is taken from a psalm, just a few words from that psalm, which probably was quoted more than any other part of scripture on the battlefield. And that is the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And finally, from John, the Gospel according to St. John, chapter 15. The words of Jesus when he said, greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. The Kootenay Battalion, the 54th Kootenay Battalion of the Canadian Expeditionary Force, was formed on May the 1st, 1915, through authorization of the Militia Department in Ottawa. Nelson, British Columbia, was the original headquarters under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Davis. Up to this time, there had been no battalion recruited in the interior of British Columbia for overseas work. And as there were already many men from the interior who had already gone over, and many more likely to go, it was felt that there should be an overseas battalion to represent them. This then was the origin of the 54th Battalion. The Kootenay was divided into districts. A Company was Nelson, B Company, Fernie, C Company, Vernon, Rossland and Grand Forks, D Company, Revelstoke, Kamloops, and Arrow Lakes. These names stuck to the companies during all the period of active warfare and were used as the code name of the company in signal and other messages. On June the 15th, 1915, the battalion assembled at camp in Vernon, BC, leaving behind their mascot, Koots, who was a little cub bear. And it's interesting to note that the battalion devised their own battle flag made from a bleached flour sack. And needless to say, this flag was carried throughout all of the battalion's campaigns throughout Europe, and was also carried in the Victory Parade in London at war's end with the approval of the King. Unfortunately, all that remains of that original battle flag are ashes, because they had a fire in the cathedral. Now, when a battalion or a group is disbanded and retired in the Army, Air Force, or Navy, the battle colors go through a ceremony called the laying up of colors. And normally the colors, the flag, is deposited in a cathedral or a local church or a chapel somewhere, and there they stay. Now, what happened in this case was something that I think is going to be happening right across the country of Canada. Somebody had a close look at the colors. They were deposited in the cathedral here, the Anglican cathedral, and somebody found that if you blew on them very hard, they would disintegrate. They were getting to such a state of disrepair, and they were getting so old. And so, through the good efforts of the 51st branch of the Legion in Nelson, they got the colors, brought them down, and encased them in these cases, which we are going to present to the museum. And there they will remain in, we hope, a state that won't be disintegrating in the years to come. So we think that we're marking not only in the history of the 54th Battalion, but also, I think, as far as I know, making history in encasing battle colors in this manner. So this is a brief history of the 54th Battalion and their colors.
Thank you, Reverend Brown.
They're of great historical value to the city of Nelson. The Legion, and especially Gordon and Ann Webb, have gone to a great deal of effort to restore the colors to their present state. So now, on behalf of the surviving members of the 54th Battalion and the Nelson Branch 51 of the Royal Canadian Legion, I am honored at this time to turn the colors over to you for installation in a place of honor in our Nelson Museum. Mayor Maglio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bucko. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the 54th Battalion. I'm very happy to set these flags in memory of the 54th Battalion, and I'll see that they will be put in its proper place in our museum. Thank you very much.
September the 8th, 1984, to the 54th Kootenay Battalion, Canadian Expeditionary Force, 1914-1919. Eternal as stone, their memory remains. From the citizens of Nelson and the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 51.
Thank you, Comrade Melanchuk. I'd like to call on Comrade Doug.
If we were to get at least the slightest bit damp, the autographs would probably disappear because they've faded out to the point where they are legible, and that's about all. So any of you interested in these drums, there are two of them. They are side drums, and they are on display upstairs together with a cornet that was used in the 54th band. there's a gap of some 40 years when we don't know where these drums were. They were presented to the Legion in 1961 for safekeeping, and prior to that, from approximately 1919, when they returned to Canada, no one seems to know where they were. There is a rumor that Bert Harridge, our departed member of Parliament, had them, and I heard another one this morning that Mrs. Miller had these in her basement for years. To the old-timers of Nelson, remember the Grand Central Hotel, which stood where the credit union is today. And up Vernon Street, they had a back, I suppose you'd call it a backyard. It was fenced in by about an 8-foot board fence. And Koots lived in the backyard. And they had a pole about the size of a telephone pole with a platform on top. And it would be about 12, 14 feet high. And Koots used to climb up the pole and sleep on the platform. And as kids, we used to go down and feed Koots candy, peanuts, anything you wanted to throw Koots, he was greatly appreciative. And up in the window of the hotel, up on the second floor, they had large windows like these, and there was a big cage with a green parrot in it. I don't remember the parrot's name, but being as the hotel was occupied mainly by miners, the parrot spent his time, he had a flow of language as good as any of the miners, and he would sit up in his perch and call Koots all the fancy names he could, because Koots got all the attention, and the parrots just had to sit and watch him. And unfortunately, somewhere, I just don't remember the date, would be around 1920 or 21, they found Koots in the morning. Apparently he had rolled off his platform at night when he was asleep, and he fell to the ground and broke his neck. And Koots was dead when they found him in the morning. And that is the story of Koots. And I remember this personally, so I can tell you that Koots never saw a zoo. He had a very happy life, what he had of it, because every kid in town was feeding him. And I'm sorry I haven't any more information.
Now have the 1 minute silence. Sir. Guard, 2 paces forward, quick! Out! Guard, right, rest. Guard, by the right, quick! Out!
In the 69th reunion of the 54th Battalion here in Nelson, with 6 of the original veterans attending out of 20 that are still alive, and the youngest being 87 years of age and the eldest 93. Talk to Frank Ryall. You're from?
I'm from Vernon. I came from Vancouver up to Vernon to join the 54th in August 1915. Stayed with it long enough to become sergeant of number 9 platoon. Went overseas with it when they went overseas. Was wounded twice, and the last time that I was over was in Vimy Ridge in April the 9th, 1917. And at that time I got half my hip shot away, and that's the only disability I have now.
What were you hit by?
I was hit by a piece of shrapnel. It was about half the size of your fist, and it went right into the hip, and it made a hole about 5 inches in diameter, and came out on the inside of the leg. And of course that severed all the nerves, and so all the nerves of the foot and the leg have now been gone, but they're gradually joining up together again. So after all these years, maybe before I die, that I'll have a good leg again. I hope so.
And how old are you?
I'm 90.
You're 90.
I'm 90, yes.
Thank you. And this is Fred Pratt. Where are you from, Fred?
I live out of town about 8 miles. 49 Creek.
Near Nelson, BC.
Near Nelson, yeah. I joined here in Nelson in 1915, and I came back to Nelson. I'm one of the old timers in my district. Lived over 70 years in the district, and I hope to live till I die, and I hope to make another 100 years.
Did you go over to France with Frank Ryall in 1950?
No, he was wounded at Vimy Ridge. I was in the Battle of Vimy Ridge, but I wasn't wounded till 2 months later at Lens.
But you went over at the same time with the battalion?
Yeah, well, I joined here, but I was put into the 102nd, which went with the same brigade, and we worked with the 54th all times. In fact, when we had the gas attack on the 1st of March 1917, where we put the gas tanks in, and they did the attack in, but the wind changed and they got decimated. And we went in then to assist them out and bury the dead, and we took out their Colonel Kimball from Caslow, and we buried him in a temporary grave close to Chateau du La Haye. And I never forget that. That was a terrifying day. We threw in 1,500 bodies altogether on top of Vimy Ridge into one crater. Afterwards, I think they took them out and buried them all in different cemeteries. But we just threw them in there, get rid of them. And the Germans helped us. We had an armistice with the Germans on that occasion for 6 hours.
On that particular time that he's speaking about was when the gas attack was on. The 54th Battalion lost 16 officers and 350 men on that day. And an armistice was called with the Germans. Took a lot of trench mats out into no man's land, and the Germans unhooked the Canadian dead off of the wire and brought them to the mat in the center, and we went out and took them from there in and brought them in for burial. That was a sad day.
The 54th is basically an infantry battalion, isn't it?
Yes, a complete infantry battalion, and a very good one too.
But a day like this, there was an awful lot of young fellas. Me and my brother, in fact, my brother and myself and two uncles was all together in the same platoon. And when we was wounded, we didn't know where the other one was. We had to get word back from Canada before we found out where our relatives was. But anyway, of course, I'm the only one surviving out of the four.
Did they bring you back to Canada after you were injured?
Yeah, they came back to Canada afterwards. Two of them in Vancouver. My two uncles was in Vancouver, and my brother was here in France and here in the valley here.
He was injured in the war as well?
Yeah, we were all injured, every one of us. But anyway, we're lucky. We're still existing. And the doctor says we have every chance to live to be 100. I said, can't you make it another 125? He said, no.
How old are you, Fred?
No guarantees. I'm 87.
87.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Now we're talking to George Palmer. You went over with the battalion in 1915, did you? To France? Did you go over to France in 1915 with the battalion?
I joined up in May 1915 and went with the 54th then in Vernon. We went overseas, stayed with the 54th in Bramshot Camp, and then we went over over to France in 15, towards the end of 15, and well, I've been chasing around ever since.
And where do you live now, George?
I'm in the Jubilee Manor up here.
Nelson here.
And your home, where were you living in 1915 before you went in?
Pardon?
Where were you living in 1915?
In Castle.
In Castle.
Yeah.
And how old are you, George? How old are you?
94.
94. Thank you. Now we're talking. Could you describe some of your medals? And tell us.
Pardon?
Can you tell us where and why you got those medals that you have?
Oh, I got these?
Those medals, yes.
Oh, well, I don't know. They're just a general service for certain times, and then I'm in both wars. I was in both wars.
You were in World War II as well?
First war and the second World War. I was in. I'm one of them for that.
Were you injured in the First World War?
Pardon?
Were you injured in the First World War?
Oh yeah, I was with it. And soon after it started, I come down and joined up with it.
Can you tell us what happened?
Pardon?
What happened there?
Well, nothing very much. All I got to was England. I got back to England with it for a little while, but there's no. I didn't get over to France for any fighting on the second war, but I've done plenty of it in the first on the Somme and around Vimy and them places. I went through all that.
You saw lots of action. You saw lots of action in the First World War.
Yeah. I never see any no rough stuff in the Second World War. I was always chasing around in these. Well, I was in prison, looking after prison camps down in Lethbridge and Moose Jaw there for a while. They used to put us on doing the guard duty, and the new lads, young lads, when they come back, they couldn't depend on them to take charge of them cabs. They'd put them up in the tower and they'd get buzz off.
Thank you, George. Now we're talking to Eric Grisdale. Where are you living now, Eric?
I'm living in Vancouver.
In Vancouver. You went over to Europe with the 54th Battalion in
That's right. I joined the 54th Battalion. I enlisted in Kamloops, and then I came to Vernon and joined the 54th Battalion. And I went overseas with them in November of 1915 we got the Bram shot on the 1st of December, 1915.
Bram shot England.
The Bram shot camp. And then we went to France on the August the 13th of 1916. And we went into what then was known as the craters at that time, up close to St. Eloi. From there we walked or more or less marched from Ypres to the Somme. We went over on the 18th of November, 1916, and I was in the scout section, and I was asked by Major MacDonald to lead back 9 prisoners which were captured on the morning of the 18th of November, and I led them back to the battalion headquarters, where I soon saw Colonel Campbell, and I was wounded at that time. I was hit in the head by a piece of shrapnel, and then I went from there to the dressing station and was treated by Dr. Hamilton, who was our doctor at the White Chateau in Zouave Valley. I got wounded on the 18th of November, and I went back to number 2 Canadian General Hospital in Le Treport, and I stayed there for 2 or 3 days, and then I was shipped back to Le Havre, and I went and rejoined the battalion on the night of December the 25th, Christmas Eve. And I may say that when the quartermaster, Captain Foster, said that we were to go up the line next day, that the battalion was short-handed, I went around to the estaminet and bought a bottle of wine. A bottle of wine cost $1 in those days, either red or white wine, and I carried that very carefully in my pack all the way from Villers-aux-Bois, where we were in horse lines there, and right up to the Vimy Ridge. And when I got to the ridge and joined the scout section, they just threw my wine over the parado, the back of the trench, because the rum issue had come up that day and the battalion was short-handed. I may say that I played football all the time, soccer football all the time for the battalion, right from start to finish. I was recommended for commission in 1918 and came back to England, and that's where I was when armistice was declared. From there I went up to Whitley Camp and got my moving orders to go back to Canada on the 24th of March. I landed in Vancouver we landed in November in Halifax on the 1st of April, on the 1st of April, and on the 7th of April I got discharged at Hastings Park in Vancouver. On the Second War, I joined the 2nd Battalion of the DCORs in the drill hall in Vancouver, and I put in 4 camps. I went to camp in Vernon to Nanaimo in 1940, and Nanaimo again in 41. I went to camp in Vernon, 2nd Battalion, on 43 and 44, and then on 45, of course, the war was over, so I came home from there.
Thank you. How old are you, Eric?
I'm 87.
You're 87. And where are you living now?
I'm living in Vancouver.
You're living in Vancouver. Thank you. Now we're going to talk to Jim Hall. Where are you from, Jim?
I'm from Nakusp.
You're from Nakusp?
Yes.
Where were you from when you enlisted in the 54th Battalion?
I was living in Graham's Landing near Burton.
Where?
Graham's Landing near Burton. Near Burton City.
And how old are you, Jim?
Eh?
How old are you?
I'm 92.
92.
Going into 93.
Can you tell us about some events of 1915, 1916 when you went over to Europe?
I enlisted in Nelson here in 1915. And I had also two brothers in it. One was killed on Vimy Ridge. The other one died in trail. I was wounded on the thumb with an overhead blast. And I come back, and I just in time to go down in Passchendaele. Any of you guys was in Passchendaele? No. Hey, that was another place.
So you weren't necessarily all together in...
No, different companies.
Different companies.
Yes.
Is this the first time that you...
What's that?
Is this the first time you reunited with these fellows?
Yes, I think so, yes. Not this guy, no, this
I met this gentleman when we went down to Ottawa 5 years ago on the 60th anniversary of the armistice. We was invited one of each group, and he was one and I was another. He's riding, he's using this green beret that he's given to us that day. I had one given, but I didn't bring it in today. I should have brought it in, Eric.
Yeah, you should have done.
Yeah. But we had a great 4 days at the government expense. That's the best time I've ever had in my life. It kind of obliterates some of the memories. Today it brings back a few of the bad memories that I had from some of the boys. My chums was with me. We had 8 sets of brothers, me and my brother, and there's from the district here, Saturn, the two good brothers, and the Gallipo brothers from Grand Forks, and the Morrison brothers from Fruitvale, and the Schubert brothers from Vernon, and Style brothers from Vancouver Island, but there was a few more, I can't just remember them all. And we was all together in one bunch. They called them the brothers. And everyone lost one brother in one battle, and we was all alone. And wherefore, to keep warm, you only had one blanket issued to us, so we'd sleep with our brothers to keep warm, 2 of us together in a blanket. So after that, we'd have 2 blankets, you see. One we'd maybe put under us and one on top of us. And of course, then we'd adopt one of the other brothers that had lost his brother. So that's, there were some real good boys. And it's a real shame that they're not back here with me today. It gave me a real shock today to think of it. Some real good boys.
I might interrupt and say that this is my 55th meeting of the association that we have in Vancouver.
56th, is it? Or should it be the 59th? The 60th anniversary of the armistice when we went down to Ottawa.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're getting on for the 70s, you know, and maybe they'll send us back down there again.
They gave us a very good time in Ottawa because I was there twice. I was there for the anniversary of the Vimy Ridge and also for the armistice, 60 years after armistice. The Legion really gave us a good time when we were down there. I took my wife with me, and we had really a good time.
I met him there, and it was really good. And his wife was a very fine lady. I was wishing to meet her again today, but poor Eric said he lost her a year ago. I'm very sorry to hear that, Eric. She was a telephone operator here in Nelson.
She was. Her name was Miss Cox, and she was the chief telephone operator here in Nelson in 1926 and 27. Where I met her was in Kamloops in 1927. We were married for 50 years, and there was nobody better.
It's too bad, Eric.
I think we've had some great men come out of the 54th. When you look back and you think of some of what the members of the original members of the 54th have accomplished, I think 2 of the members became mayor of Salmon Arm, And then, of course, we've got Howard Green, who's Member of Parliament, who was Secretary of State under the Diefenbaker government, and has been very active ever since.
And also Bert Herridge.
Yes, Bert Herridge, well, he's outstanding, because he always had some good job to do for everybody. And as a Member of Parliament, I think he was absolutely outstanding. I remember on my 50th wedding anniversary, he came down from Nakusp down to Vernon to attend my golden wedding. And that was, let me see, 16, 17 years ago. My wife passed away about a year and a half ago. But Bert came down all the way from Nakusp to be with me on that occasion. And that was just a little example of the spirit that was there in the members of the old 54th.
The quality of the 54th was superb. We took our training with them, and they showed us, they was leading us. We was always what do you call it when you're buying them, pushing ahead? I forget the word for it now, but we worked together, and there was a fine bunch of men. Just, well, of course, there's a lot of good men all through the army. We meet them in the hospitals and everywhere else. I've had 6 operations. They would offer to give me one more, but I don't want any more. I said, that's enough.
If we want to look back at the good people that we had in the 54th, you haven't got to look too far. We've got one with us today, one which I claim has been the foundation of holding the 54th together for all these years since the war was over, and that's our comrade Eric Grisdale. He's been secretary, and he's kept in touch at his own expense of all the members that he could find. And there's never a meeting, comes off every November. The last few of them I haven't been able to get down to because being in November, couldn't get away from Vernon to go all the way down there to see them. And other times I've either been in Australia, England, or California, or some other place that made it too hard for me to get at them. But nevertheless, we always get a letter from Eric Grisdale to tell us who was there and who wasn't there, and to give us all the up-to-date information on the battalion. So I think we owe a great deal of gratitude to Eric Grisdale.
Thank you. Good man.
Anything more you'd like to add? And we don't want to keep you sitting here all day, but...
Any final words, Jim?
What's that?
Do you have any final words to say?
What I would like to say is that I think every young man from 18 to 21 should join the army. And then we wouldn't have to be having all these robberies and what have you. And the kids don't know what to do today. And I'm a firm believer in the Boy Scouts because I joined the first troop of Boy Scouts in Vancouver in 1911. I was in the first Grand Rue troop, and we went all the way I went to Kamloops, and we went from Kamloops to Vernon on bicycles, 7 of us, 1915. We drove from Kamloops to Vernon and stayed overnight in the park there, Polson Park. And I'm a firm believer in the Boy Scouts movement. I'd like to see every kid join the Boy Scouts or the Girl Guides, which are very, very good units to belong to.
Thank you.
I endorse that. I figure the kids need a little discipline. That's a fact. I was on the school board here, and it seemed to me, I said the kids are just running wild. They're running from one room to another, and sometimes they're not going to school when they should be. But being in the army sure teaches them something to not only take care of themselves, but to think for other people too. I think that's a great thing.
One more thing, I think that they should bring the uniforms the way they used to be, so the man had pride in his unit, not the way they are today. They just look like a bunch of slobs from nowhere.
Any last words, Jim?
Well, I was going to say I was awarded the MN for the capture of a regimental German commander. And when we took him to headquarters, he told our colonel that he had 500 men waiting to counterattack. So that put off the counterattack, so that kind of saved the day that time. That's what I was awarded the MM for. I think that's all I've got right now.
Thank you.
Just getting a live shot.
Lusitania, up north of Ireland. She was torpedoing a lot of people down there. And I was working up at the Cork mine, about 12 miles from Newcastle, and pretty near the whole bunch quit there that night. We came down and joined the 54th. That whole bunch was there. I was working, as I say, at the Cork mine. And, so, torpedoing had backfired on them in some ways.
I think we ought to, at least before we close off this little affair here, we should give thanks to where it belongs. And I think we owe a great debt, the five of us here today, owe a great debt to the Canadian Legion, Branch 51 Nelson, for having spearheaded this thing to come to where it is today. We would not be all meeting today after all these years if it wasn't for the branch's activity in bringing us together. And I think we owe a debt of gratitude to Branch 51, Canadian Legion, Nelson.
I endorse that too. Very good. And the Legion has been a great branch to take up any troubles we had, either with the DVA or any other thing, and they've been magnificent in helping us. Been a great organization.